there's such a wealth of detail, historical, geographical, customs in Maria Valtorta's writings, which one would think would be quite inaccessible to an ordinary layperson and may be obtained with difficulty by a person who is in the academic world. Nonetheless, we have in the writings of Maria Valtorta so much information that it's hard to imagine she could not have had access to that if she was writing without some kind of divine assistance. Unless somebody were writing this work for her, which nobody has suggested as far as I'm aware. But even if that were suggested, it's hard to understand how in the middle of the Second World War a group of people would ever get together, a group of academics, to manufacture an alleged series of visions for which they would never earn any money and which would divert them from the important task of trying to stay alive during the war or survive in the immediate post-war environment that Italy was facing. So there's every reason to believe that she wrote this work without assistance of other human beings. The question then is, did she have the ability to produce this work? And it's instructive if we read her own diary entry from November the 4th, 1943, to see exactly where she's at in terms of biblical studies. She says, I think this is referring to a priest, Father Migliorini. In regard to your desire that I tell you what knowledge I had of sacred scripture, I can formally assure you that I was familiar with only the 4 Gospels. I have known them by memory and for years. I also once read the Song of Songs 13 or more years ago in a Protestant edition, which I later left with the pastor at St. Paulino's at that time, Monsignor Guidi, who is now dead. In a book providing general culture, I read the Proverbs of Solomon, and my knowledge ends there. To read the Bible is for me like walking in an unknown world, which would remain impenetrable for me. From my own, I understand only its superficial meaning, and what is commented on for me by the annotations at the foot of the page, which I remark are different from the ones given me by the master. When I was at school, they had me study sacred history from a little textbook adapted to our young age. And you know what those texts are like, reduced to the minimum terms. I remember the leading points, more names than events, and confess that except for Adam, Abraham, Esau, Moses, Lot, Ruth, Esther, and a few others, I no longer recall anything. A real dunce, needless to say. As for the New Testament, moreover, in addition to the Gospels, I was familiar with the passages included in the epistles, and that's all. Even now, when I have the Bible at my disposal, since you took care of that, I've not gone by a supernatural order beyond Esther, and the you who's taken care of giving her the Bible is probably her priest, Father Migliorini. And I confess to you that many, many pages of Kings and Chronicles put me to sleep, whereas I like Tobit a lot. Afterwards, the master took me in hand to such a point that I was unable to go forward in orderly fashion, and came to a standstill at the 13th chapter of Job. The rest, excluding the points which the master explains to me from time to time, represents unknown words to me. I repeat that on the days when Jesus is silent, and with the confidence of love I invite him by opening the book here and there, I don't stop even to read. I look at a point, and if I feel that Jesus is indicating he will speak, fine. If not, I open elsewhere until he speaks. If, after 3 or at most 4 attempts at different points, opened in a haphazard way from among the 1,838 pages of the book, I understand that he does not want to speak, I resign myself and read on my own from the point where I stopped, which is now page 729. And there's a footnote here which says, the edition used by her was La Sacra Bibbia, translated and commented on by Reverend Eusebio Tintori, OFM. I could not be more detailed than this, or more obedient, and I've been in the midst of many obstacles, ranging from continual interruptions to the dizzy spells caused by my condition, which the doctor found to be very serious yesterday. The state of my lungs and heart justifies all human fears, and all supernatural joys for me. I know that my pulse is very weak, thread-like, arrhythmic, and tending to decline. I feel it. I wasn't a nurse for nothing. I know that paralysis may hit me at any moment. I know that the dizziness and collapses are produced by cerebral anemia and atrophy of the heart. I know that I'm breathing with only half of my left lung, and that the right one is like a dry branch. I know everything, but these are my riches and the sources of my peace. As for the past, I entrust myself to the mercy of God. As for the present, I entrust myself to your help. As for the future, the prospect of soon going to the one I love smiles at me like a joyous sun. Every turn for the worse, then, does not have a funereal ring to it, but chimes like a festival bell announcing to me the approach of my entry into life. Just a couple of points from that, which is her conclusion of that November the 4th entry. She has statements of Jesus which follow, but I'll leave that for now. She mentions that she was a nurse, and this, she says she wasn't a nurse for nothing. Well, she perhaps didn't realise it when writing it, but the fact that she was a nurse and she's learned a lot about human physiology helps her describe, say, Jesus' sufferings on the cross and details of the passion which otherwise she wouldn't be able to find words for. The other point is that she describes her lack of knowledge of the Bible. She has a good knowledge of the Gospels, it seems, because she says she's memorised them. But what we find when we compare the Gospels to the poem of the man God, she's just not just repeating the Gospels. They're amplified, as I've said many times, but they're also nuanced. They're sort of, one finds that they're expressed in different ways, the various episodes in the Gospels at times. It's not as if she's just taken a verse and used her imagination to expand upon it. There's much more going on. So all this suggests that she didn't have the material wherewithal, the reference material, to construct the poem of man God on her own. Even had she had a lot of reference material, it's hard to see how she could have produced this work, because contained in it are data which would not be available in reference manuals which one could buy from a shop or acquire from a library. Some things are just so obscure that only specialists would have access to the information. And in fact, some information was not even known when she was alive. The final point one can make from this diary entry is her serious health conditions, which show that the amount of writing that she did over the short period of years that she did it is probably not possible. She was extremely sick a lot of the time, and it's only with the supernatural aid of God that gave her strength when it was needed to produce what she produced that could be done. We're talking about, in the poem of Man, God Alone, a work which is, I estimate, 3 times the length of War and Peace. But in addition to that, we have these diaries. We have also the book of Azariah, her guardian angel, which is a commentary on the 50 masses of the liturgical year as it then was, the 50 Sunday masses. We have her own autobiography. It just seems there's far too much for possibly anybody, but certainly in that number of years, but certainly her in her terrible health, to have been able to produce. So this November the 4th, 1943 diary entry gives us further reason to believe that the poem of the man God, also known as the Gospel as Revealed to Me, is actually of supernatural origin.